Bonsoir. Bonsoir tout le monde. Bienvenue à l'Institut de recherche clinique de Montréal. Welcome to the Institut de recherche clinique de Montréal. Ça me fait plaisir de vous voir ici et je peux vous dire que vous êtes privilégiés parce qu'on a plusieurs membres de notre conseil d'administration parmi vous. Est-ce que vous pouvez les identifier? We have a number of board members of the IRCM here. Can you identify them? Et je veux souligner la présence de la présidente du conseil, Madame Louise Lambert-Lagacé, qui est ici en avant. Madame. Je suis Tarek Maroy, je suis le président et le directeur scientifique de cette institution. My name is Tarek Maroy. I'm the president and the scientific director of the IRCM. The IRCM is an independent biomedical research institution. We are financed by the Quebec government and by research projects from the federal government and from the provincial government and from the foundation. But we are affiliated with the University of Montreal and associated to McGill University, which is not far away from here, as you can see, in Université de Montréal. De l'autre côté de la colline, McGill University, proche ici, nous sommes affiliés à l'Université de Montréal et associés à l'Université McGill. Il y a 35 unités de recherche ici qui travaillent sur des champs différents comme le cancer, l'immunologie, la neuroscience, la chimie médicinale, la nutrition, etc. et aussi sur la neuroéthique. We are 35 researchers here, professors of University of Montreal and McGill, who work on different areas from immunology to cancer to cardiovascular diseases, to medical chemistry and neuroethics. And today it's my privilege to introduce you Eric Racine, who is here next to me, who is one of our research professors who directs the neuroethics research laboratory or research unit, and who is a professor at McGill and University of Montreal. Il a fait son degré à l'Université de Montréal, était postdoc à Stanford, on l'a recruté au Québec en 2006. He came back to Montreal in 2006, I think, to take up his research here, and he has invented a very provocative title for our Café scientifique. It's not my fault, it's my brain made me do it. I like it really very much because this is the excuse that I will have now for everything that I do. Ok, alors, la parole sans plus tarder à Eric Racine.
Donc, bonsoir à tous. Bienvenue à l'IRCM ce soir. J'espère que vous allez aimer la discussion qu'on va avoir ensemble. Et comme on vous a informé, les discussions vont être essentiellement, et les présentations aussi, en anglais ce soir. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for being here with us for this IRCM Café Scientifique on the topic of neuroscience and ethics. And before going too much into my introduction, I want to do a couple of housekeeping remarks just to make sure that we're on the same page on how this discussion will go on tonight. So we will have 3 presentations by invited experts, and I will be the moderators. My role is very low-key tonight. It's to allow you to engage and discuss with our experts who are knowledgeable in different fields. I'll introduce them properly. You'll see they're very interesting people that we have recruited. They will speak for about 12 minutes, so they will deliver very short presentations to basically tease our brain and get us to think about different aspects of the topic tonight. These presentations will be in English, and then as you listen to them, we will encourage you to write down questions you have. You can write them down in French or English, no problem. And what we'll do is collect them at the break after the formal presentations. And we'll pull them together and identify cross-cutting topics. And then we'll bring back those questions in the second part after the break. And that break will be 10-15 minutes. So a short break. And they will come back as a panel. They will present individually. They'll come back as a panel at the end. Very importantly, I've been reminded to remind you that there are evaluation forms. They look like this. Very neat, to fill out during or at the end of the event. And so we encourage you to fill them so we can collect feedback to improve these cafés scientifiques. I'm also in charge of discipline, watch out. So basically, another housekeeping note is that the formal presentations are being filmed. So you're seeing there's a video crew here. You will not be filmed, and if you are, I've been warned that the crew will contact you if you're ever filmed. So please feel free to engage in discussion and questions. This is an open forum, and this is the exact format of a café scientifique, so very informal. Donc, juste pour récapituler en français, il va y avoir 3 présentations en anglais d'environ 12 minutes. Vous pouvez prendre note de vos questions pour les experts en français ou en anglais. On aura une pause de 10-15 minutes pendant laquelle je vais colliger les questions qui ont été soumises. Et ensuite, on va les soumettre à nos 3 conférenciers qui vont venir former un panel ici après la pause. Donc voilà. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Non? C'est bon? Pas tout de suite? À la pause. C'est bien. Donc, just to introduce the topic. So, my role is really to introduce the speakers and to say a few words about the topic. So, as you may know, and it's hard to avoid questions of ethics these days, especially when we think about our politics these days, it is of paramount importance. Ethics is of paramount importance. Our decisions as individuals, as workers, as students, as businesswomen, businessmen, and so on, are shaped by values, interests, and goals. We all pursue goals, interests of different kinds. So usually that works, but sometimes these goals conflict. And sometimes they conflict and they raise questions of ethics that deal with fundamental values and principles. But in spite of these conflicts, even though if we disagree in our societies, we are expected to be responsible for our own individual behaviors. We are held accountable, right? We do something, we're supposed to be responsible. We're supposed to be able to justify our behaviors. And ethics as a discipline relies on this belief that we can actually justify those decisions and we can make them, very importantly, freely and consciously, right? Because if we're not really free to do those actions, then can we really be held responsible for them? And that is the bottom line, the topic for tonight, is are we free to make decisions? And does neuroscience, this field of biomedical research that is dedicated to understanding the brain and nervous system more broadly, does it question, does it challenge our belief in what we call free will, or this freedom of action and thought that we think we have as humans? And that's the question. So, I think to illustrate a bit the topic, I'm going to use only one long quote. It's long, but I think it's meaningful. It comes from a paper from a major neuroscience journal called Nature Neuroscience. And I think you'll get the idea of what the neuroscience challenge could be to this pillar of ethics, which we call free will. I'll read it out loud for everyone. So this was basically also just was a summary of a study that had been published in Nature Neuroscience. It says, the conscious decision to push the button in this experiment was made about a second before the actual act. So people made some kind of, willful decision before acting. But the team discovered that a pattern of brain activity seemed to predict that decision by as many as 7 seconds. So before they had the conscious awareness of deciding, the researchers found brain activation patterns. They could find a signature of that decision to come before the decision was actually made and the act committed. So long before the subjects were even aware of making a choice, it seems their brains had already decided. As humans, we like to think that our decisions are under our conscious control, that we have free will. So conscious, voluntary control of action. Philosophers have debated that concept for centuries, and now the researchers in question, Haynes and other experimental neuroscientists, are raising a new challenge. They argue that consciousness of a decision may be a mere biochemical afterthought. with no influence whatsoever on the person's action. According to this logic, they say free will is an illusion. We feel we choose, but we don't, says one of the leading neuroscientists in this area, Patrick Agar. So that's bottom line the question, is are we actually masters of ourselves? The challenge to free will that neuroscience could stage, basically, is that we don't actually consciously decide of our actions. Basically, the brain does. Hence, the interesting expression we use to disseminate information about this scientifique. My brain made me do it. Now, I haven't heard this excuse yet at Commission Charbonneau. Maybe it will come. We're just beginning. But let me tell you that at the dinner table with my 3 daughters, it's extremely popular. My brain made me do it. It wasn't my fault. It's not me, it's my brain. There's a really seductive allure to this kind of explanation, of explaining away our own conscious voluntary power to act and decide on the basis of the brain. So that's a very interesting challenge, I would say, and will be the focus of tonight's discussion. And I just want to present maybe 3 different ways we could answer that question. And I think the discussions tonight will get us back on track regarding these different hypotheses. So our first hypothesis could be that basically we're facing a revolution. Neuroscience will bring a radical change on how we understand free will and voluntary action. It will basically explain away this concept of free will. We will now live in a world, where this concept doesn't have any bearing, meaning, and impact. And that's one hypothesis. A second, basically, I'll explain the play of word here, is just turning in circles. Circumvolution, which is basically, for the brain nerds in the crowd, is these brain foldings that we have in our cortex, and Leslie could correct me if I'm wrong, because she's our neuroscientist tonight. But basically, this feature of the human cortex is actually a circumvolution, but it means turning around. And basically, here what I want to get at is maybe this belief that neuroscience will really challenge free will is only speculation. It's only turning around in circles and begs the question and basically presents no challenge to free will. It's only a confused way of thinking about neuroscience and its impact on ethics. Third, maybe this is simply a potential evolution in our understanding of voluntary action based on neuroscience research. That there will be changes, but maybe more gradual in nature. So, in this case, neuroscience could help make us understand the sources of voluntary action and free will. So we have 3 different hypotheses here. A revolution, a circumvolution, or an evolution. What are we facing in terms of the impact of neuroscience on ethics? And here I basically wanted to have something that reminds me that we have top-level experts. But in the contrast to this Renaissance painting by Gerardo, we actually have the public, which is present, which we don't see in this painting. It seems like a very, I would say, select group of people, of men, thinking and discussing together. The Café scientifique is actually something very different. And in our case tonight, the question at hand relates to the field of neuroethics, which is basically at the core of the unit that I lead here at IRCM, basically trying to provide responses, humanist responses, to the novel challenges that neuroscience brings in terms of its applications to healthcare and beyond, and the insights it brings in terms of the source of knowledge that it can bring in areas such as education or ethics. So that being said, that's my job as a formal presenter. I'm not leaving, I'm staying around.